Okay, I wasn't able to insert the audio in the PowerPoint, so I'm just going to present it this way, and hopefully this works. So today I am going to be going over the spinal nerves and the spinal nerve plexus, which is Lab 10, and my name is Hayden Oriana Blanchard. So starting off with the structure of the spinal nerves, all the spinal nerves are fused into the anterior and the posterior root. The posterior root, which is kind of at the top of the model, it transmits sensory stimuli from the PNS to the CNS, and then the anterior root function transmits somatic and visceral motor signals from the CNS to the PNS, so the opposite. And when combined, they fuse into the spinal nerve. The spinal nerve splits into the posterior ramus and the anterior ramus. The posterior ramus is responsible for the posterior side of the body, and the anterior ramus is responsible for the anterior side of the body. So another important thing to remember about the spinal nerve is the rami communicants. They contain visceral motor or autonomic neurons of the sympathetic nervous system. There are no mixed nerves in the rami communicants, which are down here. It's only the visceral motor axons. And then this is all of it labeled, which we had to know for our practical 3. The first nerves in the body, the C1 through C8 nerves, are in the cervical plexus, and there's 8 pairs. So you have the transverse cervical nerve. It's sensory to skin on the chest and shoulder, and the supraclavicular nerve, sensory to skin on the chest and shoulder as well, and then the phrenic nerve, which is motor to your diaphragm. And then here I inserted a picture of the C1, and then the transverse cervical nerve right here, and then the phrenic nerve right there. And then you have the brachial plexus, which is in your arm. You have the axillary nerve, which gives motor to the deltoid muscle and sensory to the skin over the deltoid. And in the middle, kind of right below the axillary nerve, is the musculocutaneous nerve, which is motor to biceps brachii and brachialis, sensory to the lateral forearm. And then right below that is the radial nerve, motor to triceps brachii and brachioradialis, and sensory to the back of the arm, so the posterior part of the arm. And then you have the thoracic nerves, which are not a plexus. You have the intercostal nerve, which is motor to the intercostal muscles, and then you have the thoracic nerve, which is motor to rectus abdominis muscles and sensory to the skin over the abdomen and over the chest. And then here I just put in a picture of everything that the thoracic nerves kind of control. So it dilates the pupils, inhibits salivation, and then it stimulates the parts in your abdomen. And then you have the lumbar plexus, which is, we just had to know the femoral nerve. This is going to be on the front of your thigh, and that gives motor to the quadriceps femoris group, and because it's on the front of your thigh, it gives sensory to the skin in the thigh, leg, and foot. And then lastly, we have the sacral plexus, which is behind your leg, and up at the top is the sciatic nerve. That only gives sensory to the hip joints. I like to remember sciatic, only sensory. That's how I remembered it for the practical. And then below that, I wrote femoral nerve, but it's the tibial nerve. Sorry, it's the tibial nerve. I'll have to change that. And it's motor to the hamstring muscles, sensory to knee and ankle joints. And that is everything for the plexuses that we had to know. And yeah. This is everything we covered in Lab 10 and everything that was on the post document. Thank you.